Yes, Lord, it is. Hey, what's happening with ya? It is Monday, the 24th. The month is about over with. About to make it into half of a year already. Can you imagine a half of a year? Man. Hey, appreciate you. You're listening to OZZz on Smash Bros. Radio. Smash Bros. Radio is an independent radio station, digital radio station found in Jefferson County, Birmingham. You can locate us on Facebook as well as Instagram, as well as YouTube. If you have not done so, please follow, subscribe, check us all you want. You can find me OZZz on practically all social medias. You can find me on TikTok. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on Facebook, YouTube, as well as, I guess that's it. Yeah, that's it. Good morning to you. Hope your day is going along well. A little chilly here in Birmingham, but it's going to be nice later on. Just make sure you have a light jacket on. It's one of those Alabama weather that we have here. I don't know what the hell is going on. Before I get started, I like to request all that are listening and watching to add Jonathan Crum to your prayer list. Let me start by saying that please, and I don't, with all due respect, I mean not to disrespect anybody. This is not the time to flood the telephone, asking all these questions, inquiring, being nosy and all, because to be perfectly honest, 98% of you really don't give a happy goddamn. Y'all just want to be nosy ass sons of bitches. So please, with all due respect, please do not start flooding the family's phones with all these calls inquiring. Jonathan had a mishap. He's in the hospital. He's undergoing emergency surgery as we speak. And so, you have to forgive. Well, I don't know. You don't have to forgive me. I don't really care if you forgive me or not. All these questions about, well, what happened and where this and where that, what does it really matter? He's in the hospital. He's undergoing surgery. He needs prayers. That's really all that you need to know. That's all you need to know. You can say that, well, I don't care how long you've been friends with him. Some of you can say, well, you can't tell me that because you haven't been, first of all, I can tell you that. And second of all, you don't know how long we have been friends. So you can dismiss me with that. So, but, keep him in your prayers. Jonathan was there were three individuals that opened the door for me. On the radio and also for podcast. Roger Cheney was the initiator. He invited me to be on his podcast. I think it was Unique Politics. And he was the one that initiated it. And so I went from Roger Cheney's podcast, and then Roger started back with his production company, writing and producing movies. And so that's how I started with my podcast, Listen to OZZz. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, so I asked Roger about it, and Roger produced Listen to OZZz, and that's how I got started on my own with Roger's help. And then I went from there to the Outlandish Crew, and that was Jonathan's podcast, and he invited me to be on his podcast, and we were doing Jonathan Outlandish Crew was doing the podcast over at Smash Bros. Radio over in Fairfield, and that's how I was blessed to be introduced to Ralph Mobley, who was the one of the founding fathers or the pillar of Smash Bros. Radio, him and OT. And so one morning, Saturday morning, Ralph was at the station, and it was just a fluke because generally anyone knows me, I don't talk too much per se. And so I asked him that did he have any openings over at the station. He said he didn't at the time. And so I said, well, just, whenever you have an opening, just keep me in mind. And so I went from Roger's podcast to mine, and Roger started producing my podcast, Listen to OZZz. And then I was on Jonathan podcast, Outlandish Crew. And from there, out of the blue, 2 years ago, Ralph called me and then invited me to do a morning show on the station. So I owe those three individuals a lot because they opened the door for me. And I will forever be indebted to them for opening another door or establishing another career, which was really mind-blowing because anyone who knows me knows that this studio really isn't per se me. I'm more of an introvert, more like being by myself. So for Ralph and for Jonathan and then for Roger to have enough of faith and trust to invite me, I am forever indebted. So please, if you would add Jonathan Crumb Ball to your prayer list, add his family to your prayer list. Prayers, thoughts, hugs, and love to the Crumb family. I can't imagine what Mrs. Crumb is going through with Jonathan being her firstborn. And those of you who are mothers know that you love all your children the same. There is something about the firstborn, though, that really hits hard, especially when something happens. It's not to say, but mothers, you understand what I'm saying because I don't really know how to put it into words, but mamas understand what it's like for their firstborn. So I admire Jonathan a lot. He has grown from what he was to what he is now. There are a lot of petty jealousies because of his growth, because of his of what he's achieved. He has a Facebook. What is it? WTAT. Where they at though? And so for him to create that and to have the following that he has speaks volumes. It's a shame that because of an individual's past, certain individuals, especially that are in law enforcement, wishes to hold the past over their heads. And I think that's a travesty. People are jealous. That's what it really comes down to. People are jealous for individuals that have changed their lives and have bettered their lives and have improved their lives, that what they were in the past, they are no longer. And so Jonathan has withstood a lot of transgressions and petty jealousies because of what he's come from to what he is now. And I think that, personally speaking, he's an inspiration. He's an example of not allowing your past to dictate your future. So again, please add the Crumb family to your prayer list. There's just a lot going on. So shout out to Mrs. Crumb, to Twin, and to Jonathan, and to the family of the Crumb family. Our prayers are with you. So we're here for you. Smash Bros here is here for you. I'm here definitely for you. And so I love y'all a lot and I appreciate y'all. So we got a lot going on. And having said that, don't forget that in May, if you have not gotten your tickets, you need to get your tickets. Live Crown of Comedy, doors open at 7. Doors open at 7, starts at 8. Tickets are $20. It's Tristan Flossman McFarland. He's making his debut at May 19th, 2023. Please check him out. It's down there in Opelika. So, Crown of Comedy, make sure that you get your tickets May 19th, 2023. Also, if you have not done so, please, I think it's every other Saturday, C4 has a mentoring group that meets on Saturdays at Fountain Heights Community Center. So check C4 out. If you have a child, if you have a son or a male child, 13 to 18, please check out C4. Get in touch with them to see how you can have your son or male child to be a part of the mentoring group. I think they meet every other Saturdays over at Fountain Heights. Also, if you have not done so, please check out 1186 Water. I drink it every day. It's fantastic. Please check it out. It's minority owned here in Alabama. Down in Toggleville, there is who would have thought that it would be artesian wells in Alabama, but we failed to realize that Alabama is unique in its location as well as its position. So please check them out. So we had a little incident. We had a little incident to happen that was transformed and put on YouTube. What is it? I think on TikTok or YouTube. And so it was an altercation between a female student and a female substitute, and it had to do with a cell phone. As a teacher, having 25 years in as an educator, as a teacher, I was blessed in a lot of areas in that I never really had any major problems. When I started in '88, I started over at Lincoln. It was Lincoln Elementary, K through 8. Here in Birmingham, there were a lot of community schools, elementary schools that were K through 8, and I like that concept in that. Especially having a neighborhood school, everyone K through 8 was in the school, and then they went to the feeder high school. The feeder high school for Lincoln was Parker High School, which is historically at one time the largest black high school in the United States, and so it has a lot of historical significance. Lincoln has a lot of historical significance because there is a slab, a foundation that is on the playground. And where that slab is, that's where the ninth grade students from Parker would attend classes. During that time, Parker had 2 commencement. And from what I'm understanding and what I have learned here in Birmingham, and I don't know if any other area, but here in Birmingham, all the minority schools had 2 commencements because the senior class were that large. You had a fall commencement, and then you had a spring commencement. And so the ninth grade students would attend classes in back of Lincoln, and then would walk down the sidewalk, which was no more than about 10 minutes away. You could see Parker from Lincoln. So I started over there. And when I arrived there, I was a second white male teacher. Now, I was the first white academic teacher. Coach Simmons was a PE coach, and he had been there a long time. He had a long tenure at Lincoln. So when I arrived, I was a second male white teacher there. I made it a point to visit the homes where my students came from. I met with the parents. The neighborhoods that fed into Lincoln were Illiton Village, Smithville Projects, Loveman's Village, Fountain Heights, the Bottom, Druid Hills. I think that was it. Because Illiton was right there where Legion Field is. Smithfield was next door to Parker, which was next door to Lincoln. And then in back of the Civic Center, you had Fountain Heights, you had the Bottom, and you had Druid Hills. So I think, if I remember correctly, those were the residents, the neighborhoods that I visited. Uh, I did not know that you were not supposed to go to Loveman's Village. There were blacks that did not even visit Loveman's Village. I knew that for me to have a chance of being able to teach, the parents had to get to know me, and so I made it a point. The first 5 years, I made it a point to visit the homes of my students. The parents had my phone number where they could call. So I didn't have any complications because I would call home in a heartbeat. So, but during the time, my tenure as a teacher, I never had any major problems. In most cases, I was unorthodox. I was non-traditional. I expected excellence. I set my standards high. My students met or achieved higher than my expectation, my standards. I used a lot of adjectives. I did cuss. I never cussed at my students. And see, my students understood that I was not cussing at them. And there's a difference between cussing at a student, or cussing. My parents knew me when I arrived here in Birmingham. Most of the individuals at the board were alumna of Alabama State or Alabama A&M. And because of my activities and being as active as I was and participating in the activities on campus as well as off campus, majority of the people knew me or knew of me because of me being white. So to see these incidences, to see the transactions that are going on in school, I'm baffled. So the question comes in, who is at fault? Is it the school board? Is it the school? Is it the parents, the teacher, the students? Is it society? Because we fail to realize, or we fail to recognize that public education is a reflection of society. So whatever is transpiring or whatever is happening in society or whatever is going on in society, it is going to be somewhat of an influence in public education. And that's what we're seeing now. Statewide, county-wise, city-wise, federal-wise. People do not have the respect for teachers or those individuals who are in education. They look down on teachers for some reason. Here in Alabama, I think that the Constitution, the Alabama Education Association, is classified as a union. And the AEA is not a union. The AEA is a professional organization, just like the NAA, just like the medical association, just like the bar. Those are professional organizations for doctors as well as lawyers. So the teachers, educators have AEA, which is Alabama Education Association, which is not a union. It is a professional organization. The Constitution, the state does not recognize unions. Now, there is a union, which is the Federation of Teachers, is a union. Now, that is a union. AEA is not a union. It is a professional organization. There's two distinct entities, though they have the same interests as in regards to education when it comes to administrators as well as teachers. So when cell phones were invented, or when they popped up, or whatever word you wish to use, there's always been an understanding or rule saying that you were not to have your your cell phones out. I never had to take phones. The only time I took phones were when the administration was visiting classrooms unexpectedly and were confiscating the cell phones. And then I told my seniors to put their phones in my drawer because I mean I didn't understand what was. But anyway, you can. We're not even going to debate it. As long as my students stayed in their place as young adults, I didn't have a problem. So when the administration all of a sudden got a hair in their ass and they wanted to come around and try to intimidate the students and all, I always took up for my students. My students always stayed with me. They always stayed in their place as young adults. And I used to tell them this is not a democracy. This is a dictatorship. Whatever I request, you're going to do. Now, if you have a problem or a concern or an issue with what I'm doing, well, then you need to tell your parents and ask your parents to come up to talk to me, and I will talk to your parents. But you're not my equal. Your parents are my equal. So if you feel that I have unjustly done you, well, then we can talk about it. But once you step out of your place and you think that you're my equal, well, then you need to bring your parent in and your parent needs to talk to me because, see, you're forgetting your place. I never had a problem. I never even had any fear. Now, understand, I taught seniors, and my boys were big enough that they could use me like a lasso, like a rope, and throw me all over the place. But it was understood that once you stepped over or once you stepped out of your place, you are no longer a student. You're no longer a teenager. You are an adult. Now, the state claims that you're not supposed to lay hands on your student. Fuck that. If a student lays their hands on me, I'm taking them out, or I'm going to try to take them out. And if by chance, and there's a 98% chance that I am in the hospital because of the altercation, because of the fight, well, I'm going to be smiling because once that student has stepped out of their place as a student, as a child, they have inducted themselves into adulthood. And then I have stepped out from being a teacher to being a private citizen. So I'm going to sue the hell out of whoever. And then I'm going to be smiling with pain because I know that the student that is also recuperating in another room because they're missing something that they had in the beginning but lost at the end. See, that was an understanding. We already understood. My main concern was that I was liked and respected a lot from a lot of students. My only concern was that when and if the students found out what had transpired, there were certain students I knew that were going to take it in their hands to handle it, and I didn't want them to become involved. But see, I had the support of my parents too. My kids understood that I will call your parent in a heartbeat. I would dial those numbers. And it's been funny when there were telephones allowed in the classroom. I didn't have a problem with lifting the receiver and showing it. And 9 times out of 10, they would say, "Why are you tripping, man? Why are you tripping?" And I used to tell them, because you making me trip. You thinking that you're my equal. And I'm about to show you you're not my equal. So I'm going to call the individual that is my equal. And I'm going to let the individual know on the other end of this line what you're doing. And 9 times out of 10, the mama or the daddy is going to ask me to lay hands on them. I can't lay hands on them because I like to eat. And then with me visiting the homes, because see, where my kids came from their environment was difficult. It was an inner city school. It was an urban school. And 98% of the time, my students never had a male academic teacher. especially a white teacher. So I knew that it was to my benefit. It was advantageous for me to meet with the parents so that way the parents would know who I was, could see me. So and teenagers are going to be teenagers, understand that. So when a teenager feels that they're in trouble, they're going to turn on the adult, which would be me, and say, well, he did this. But the parents would have already met me, know me, have a rapport with me, in that the first thing the parents would ask, well, what did you do? So I never had any fear of any of my students, and any of my students attacking me or even threatening me. Now, in 88, I taught the original OZZz. I taught the Crips, the Bloods, the Disciples, the Viceroys. I taught those individuals. Now, gangs were always in Birmingham, and they're still here in Birmingham, but they weren't as prominent as what they were in 1988. And we were finding out that the problems that were occurring in the neighborhoods were not from the major gangs. They were from the backyard gangs or the alphabet gangs, because you had the Crips, the Bloods, the Disciples, the Viceroys, and then those individuals who were not allowed or who were not able or could handle the fire in going through the initiation period, they started their backyard gangs. So see, that's where the problems were coming from. It wasn't per se coming from the major gangs, as I call them, or the original OZZs. It was from the backyard gangs. But see, I taught Crips, Bloods, and Disciples. And they knew that once they entered my room, all that gang stuff was put aside. Once you entered my room, you put your colors out, and you became scholars. So whatever transpired, whatever went on in the neighborhood during the weekend, don't bring that shit to my classroom, because I don't want to hear it. I'm not going to participate in it. I'm not going to be an accomplice to it. So whatever you have, you drop that at the door, because I'm not going to allow you to bring it in. Now, see, my first year, I had 4 classes, but I had 3 preps. I taught 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. I had 10 or 15 6th graders. And with those 6th graders, I taught 2 preps. I taught reading and content area, and I taught 6th grade history. And then I had 7th grade history and 8th grade history. So see, my first class was a split between 6th and 7th graders. So I had 3 preps. I had reading and content area for the 6th graders. I had 6th and 7th grade history. So let's use it. I had 10 6th graders. And so I used the history book as reading content area. And then I had 35 7th graders, because back then there wasn't a certain number. So I had 45 students that I was teaching first period. 3 preps, reading, 2 social studies. And then that second class was all 7th graders. And I had 35 to 37 7th graders. The third class was a split between 7th and 8th graders. So see, that was 2 preps, because I had the 7th grade history and 8th grade history. And then the last class was all 8th graders, which I think I had close to 40 students. And that was my first year. First year. I used to turn the lights out. We used to listen to jazz. We used to listen to rhythm and blues. I used to put the desk out in the hall, and my kids would lay on the floor to do their homework, or I would do my lessons. So I had, and when I first started teaching, my desk was in the middle. The students' desk surrounded my desk, and there was 2 desks next to my desk, the teacher's desk, because those were reserved for the kids that had attention problems. And it didn't hit me until about a month into teaching that I was fulfilling my dream. And there was a certain quotation that my former dean put in my yearbook from Alabama State by Henry David Thoreau. If a man advances confidently in the direction of his dreams and endeavors to live that life which he has imagined, he would meet success unexpected in some common hour. So it hit me that my desk were arranged as my dreams were. So my first year, I learned that what state taught me was not real. Because when you're being taught in a classroom, you're taught in a perfect situation. There's no perfect situation when it comes to teaching, because each class has its own personality. Each class has its own rhythm. Each class has its own aura. And especially at last class, because that last class is a class where everybody's been through everybody else's class and they're tired. And as a qualified teacher, I understood the personalities of my students, of my classes. And 98% of the teachers of Birmingham system understands exactly that. I had a senior teacher to tell me 98% of teaching is personality, and the other 2% is your subject matter or your curriculum. Because we always had that individual or that professor, that teacher who knew what they were doing, who wrote books, but they couldn't teach. And it's mind-blowing. You could write a book, have it published, and then your book is being utilized in our classes, but you can't teach what you wrote. But that's how it was. So to see this situation occur to where you had this student to attack this teacher was mind-blowing to me. Because one, I questioned how comfortable the student was to even lay hands or even to think about laying hands on an adult, how common it was. And then, to be perfectly honest, the little girl can fight because she was sure enough whipping you. She was giving that substitute teacher hell. So it surprised me that, first of all, the student was comfortable enough or felt common enough that she felt that she could lay hands on an adult. And that as if she didn't see any type of consequences or ramification of what she did. And then now there's a lot of, or more, not a lot, more videos coming up where you have students really outraged that an adult took their phone, banging on the door, it's cussing like adults. Now, back there in my day, you could judge a student or a child by the parent. But nowadays, you can't do that. A child can come from a well-structured, disciplined family. But once that child has left the visual of the parents, that child becomes a different individual. So you can't blame, in some cases, you can't blame the parents because the parent has done their job, because that child knows that they better not have done what they did to that teacher. Now, as a seasoned teacher, you pretty much know when a child doesn't do the same thing at the house. There's a certain nonverbal communication. The body language dictates that they don't do at the house. I never had a problem telling my students, time to put away your phones. And then it comes to respect, too. I've always addressed my students or answered my students, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, sir, no, sir. I always addressed them as gentlemen or ladies. My students knew that I was there for them. Now, being a substitute is totally different because you don't know the atmosphere. You don't really know what you're going into once you are a substitute. For that student to have that aggressiveness, it's mind blowing. So who's at fault? Who's at fault? Why would the student think that they would have a right to have their phone out? And then some people are saying that, well, some teachers say whatever they want to the students. Okay, but that does not give that child the right to step out of their place as a child. That doesn't give them permission to do that. Now, an adult should not downgrade nor talk down to a child. A teacher should never talk down to a child. Now, some people say, "But Heems, you did it." I never talked down to my students. I cussed because I couldn't strangle them. And teenagers understood there was no malice, there was no maliciousness, there was no evil intent. I'm sort of like what you classified as a Dutch uncle. My words are strong, but the intent is love. I have no tact. I don't see the purpose of having tact. I don't see the purpose of having political correctness. I don't see the purpose of having participation trophies. I don't. And then when you have this leeway or this comforting, I don't understand it. You have watered down your child, in which they cannot function properly when it comes to the world. A participation award. Get out of here. You didn't win. Okay, get over it. You're not going to win when it comes to life. Get over it. Learn from it. Suck it up. What could you have done better? You're going to give them participation award. Get out of here, please. No. So, but you have a lot of factors. And people, I don't think that people understand the ramification that COVID has had on this generation. There was a year that students were not in school, or a year and a half, depending on where your child went to school. They did not have the socialization. And then when you look at it, they didn't have the ability to socialize anyway, because you allowed them to always be on the damn iPad, iPhone, or whatever. They're in their room. They're not outside. That's why you're having health problems. That's why you're having these attitudes. That's why you're having this, confrontation resolution. They don't know how to talk it out. But to see this rage, to see this anger that this student had, there's something going on. For the student to invade the privacy of the teacher, that says something. And even when I did substitute teaching over in Columbia, South Carolina, I never dealt with that. Kenyon High School, which was on off of Two Notch in Columbia, South Carolina. I remember, I think my first or second day on campus, I had two football players to come up to me and tell me, "You need to move your car." I was like, "Oh, wow, first day." And now I'm being told. They said, "No, really, you don't need to park your car there." So I moved my car. But I noticed that as soon as I moved my car, a certain male teacher parked their car there. That car was damaged. I don't know. And it's not funny. I don't know what had happened or what. I don't know the situation. But the gentleman's car was torn up. And it so happened I was substituting English. And the two football players were in the English class. And I told them, I appreciate y'all guys. They said, no problem. But I never had a problem as a substitute. I think we were learning about, was something about Romeo and Juliet. The students were having problems with understanding. So I had to bring it back. I had to bring it to their situation as of now. You have Romeo and Juliet. You have two teenagers coming from two different families. Let's say a white family and a black family, or two families who didn't get along. So you're having all this transgression, all this anger, all this stuff that has transpired between these two families. Now you have the younger members of these families that have fallen in love. Oh, that was preposterous. There's no way in hell that you're going to marry him or she's going to marry you. It's not heard of. So the kids got a better understanding of what the premise of Romeo and Juliet was. When I taught history, there was this, we were talking about the West. And I brought out the point that the word cowboy really derived from the young black males that watched over the cows. That's where cowboys came from. It came from the young black males that watched over the cows. They were the first cowboys, these black males that watched over the cows. So I brought everything into content. So it's mind-blowing to me that these individuals are having problems with these kids. Now, could I handle? I don't know if I would want to. I was blessed when I got out in 2013. I was really blessed. I got out at a good time. And because of the situation and circumstance that I was retired, is really a blessing. Because the way that it initiated was I was senior advisor. So I was taking money up for senior week, senior trips. I was also collecting money for commencement. And so I would always put the money bag behind me. I had a 2-drawer filing cabinet, and I would put the money in the bottom drawer and have books on top of it where the money came up missing. And so they went back and looked at the camera, and they saw no one exited or entered my classroom. So it had to be those students that were in my classroom. But then there was a question, well, why did you keep your money in the room? Well, I kept the money in the room because the bookkeeper was always late coming to work, because she had the PIN or the code that she could sign into the computer. So that way she would sign in that she came in around 7, when really she didn't get there until around 3 or 4. So see, I didn't have, and no one in the office would accept the money. And then during the time, we had Dr. Larry Contry that told me, well, put it in the trunk of your car. So see, that was a situation too. And then once I went to the doctor was asking what was my problem. Because see, I have myasthenia gravis. So the doctor told me that I would have to retire or die. Dying was not even in the equation. So that was another reason, the capital reason why I retired was because of health reasons. Because see, I was so used to being under pressure, I didn't know I was under pressure. Because see, I was senior advisor, I was over commencement, And also I was teaching AP classes. And then I was department chair. But see, I was used to having all that on me because those of us who were teachers understood that it's better for us to do the things ourselves instead of asking for help. Because 9 times out of 10, the individuals who we ask for help or ask for assistance would halfway do it or fuck it up. So that way we would have to redo it over. So why go through that hassle when you can just go ahead and do it correctly? So see, I had all of that to deal with. So dealing with the attitudes that these students have now, I'm pretty sure that I could handle it and I wouldn't have the problems because, again, students know when you're there for them and they know when you're not. See, when I became a teacher, I knew that I was not going to be paid for my worth, for my value, and that was cool. I knew that what I was getting involved in. Now, during that time, we had teacher orientation, and I was dumbfounded that when the question was asked with the new teachers, oh, well, why did you become a teacher in my group? 3 of the teachers said, because I wanted summer vacation. And I wondered, when the hell do you have summer vacation? I don't have summer vacation. Because during that time, I was going back to school to learn different techniques or whatever when it came to my subject matter, when it came to my curriculum. I didn't have a vacation. So for these dimwits to have the audacity to say they want a vacation, well, then you going into it for the wrong reason. And then I had one teacher that bought, Stand By Me, because they didn't know how to teach black students. And I'm wondering, you stupid. Students are students. So I didn't understand the concept or the opinions of some of these teachers. And you have to understand, during my day when I was growing up, everyone in the community took care of me, watched me. Teachers lived in the community where I lived. So there wasn't anything I could do. Not only did everyone in that community know who my relatives, my grandparents, my great-grandparents, my great-aunts and uncles were, the teachers lived in the community. We went to the churches in the community. We shopped in the community. Everything that we needed, everything that was required was in that community. The only time we ventured out of the community was when the choirs would go to a different church to sing or when there was an anniversary. And that was the only time the church left and went to another church. But other than that, everything was in that community. There was a togetherness. There was a village. So when I think it was Hillary Clinton that came out, it takes a village to raise a child, it blew my mind. Down here in the South, we knew that it took a village. We understood the concept of a village. There's nothing happening now that didn't happen back then. We had single mothers. We had single parents. We had parents who worked 2 to 3 jobs. I was a latchkey kid. I knew my responsibilities. I knew that if clothes were out on the line, I had to take the clothes down. I had to fold them, put them in the proper rooms. I had to do my studies. And then at 4:30 or 5, depending on when Mama got off, I had to make sure that the vegetables or whatever were already on the stove cooking. So when Mama came home, she could finish cooking. I had responsibilities. Now we had a Philpox, I think, television, a square television. Now I wasn't supposed to turn the television on until after I finished I wasn't supposed to turn it on, period, until an adult got home. But see, I didn't understand. I didn't understand that once you turn that damn television on, the tube stayed hot, which means that the television stayed warm. And that's how they knew that I had turned the television on, because they always placed their keys on top of the television to feel if it was cold or warm. So see, I had responsibilities. We ate as a family. We had breakfast together. We had supper together. The children of the family had responsibilities, had expectations. as the oldest, as the eldest of the grandchildren, as the firstborn, there were certain expectations and expectations that I had to do. I never questioned. I knew my place. I stayed in my place. I accepted my place. I didn't. You didn't question. Question what? And I ate everything on my plate. We didn't have 2 and 3 meals. Well, what do you want? What do you? No, we always had one meal, and groceries were bought. So it wasn't going to the grocery stores to pick up something to cook. It was already cooked. It was already there, and that was before crock pots. Before I went to school, if Mama would wash the clothes, I had to hang the clothes out. But I still got to school on time because, see, I still had to take Tammy, my sister, to school. I had to walk her to school and still made it to school on time. So when we came home, I had to go by, pick up Tammy, walk us home. I had to take the clothes off the line, fold the clothes, put them in the proper space, do my homework, make sure that the food was on the stove cooking before Mama got home. And once she came home, I went outside to play. Latchkey kid. Then when we lived with my grandparents, I could go outside as long as there were some adults outside. And there usually was. But now you don't have that. We go to churches that miles away from the community. We don't even go to the schools that are in the community. That's one thing I liked about Birmingham, having K through 8. I don't like the middle school concept. I don't see the purpose. It's not fulfilling its qualification or its expectation. I was one of 4 teachers, and I was a first-year, second-year teacher that was on that committee. I wrote the concept for middle school for Birmingham, or one of the ones. I think we still need to go back to K through 8. Because the concept that I wrote, it was to serve as sort of like as a junior high to prep you for high school. We're not doing that. So to see this mentality that these students have now is mind-blowing for me. To see these attitudes of these parents are mind-blowing. But again, you cannot judge these parents by their children, because sometimes the children are not acting like they were raised. So sometimes it's not the parents' fault. But this student was too calm and felt too comfortable to get in the private zone of a teacher, of an adult, and then to lay hands on an adult. But that child, sure enough, was giving that teacher a hell of a time. She was not backing down. Because I know some teachers over at Huffman would slap the hell out of somebody and there would not be no comeback. And then for you to talk about, well, she didn't have any panties on, let the record show that there are some adults that do not wear underwear. I know of some teachers, male and female teachers over at Huffman, that did not wear underwear. Sure didn't. I know of one female teacher that was sitting in the front of the classroom in front of the male students to show all of her glory. Sure did. I'm not going to mention no names. Students know who they are. Same way when it came to the male teachers. Male teachers didn't tuck themselves. So for you to say that that it had no factor in the matter. Some adults don't wear, and some young adults don't wear underwear for whatever reason. So that didn't even play a factor. So who's really at fault? Is it the school board? Could the school have done something better? Was it the parents' fault? Was it the students' fault? Was it the sub's fault? So, it's mind-blowing. But here in Birmingham, it is understood that cell phones were not to be out. Cell phones are not to be out. Cell phones were to be put away. And I rarely took a cell phone up. All I had to do was say, you need to put it up. But I had that type of relationship with my students. So, what are we going to do about education? How can we improve? What are we going to do about these ramifications of COVID? What are we going to do when it comes to education, period, in the United States? There's certain subjects, books are being banned now. Are you serious? Books are being banned? Certain subjects cannot be taught? Critical race there? Please give me a break. So what are we going to do about education? What are you going to allow to happen in education? Parents, those of you who have parents who have students going in middle school or junior high school, what are you doing prepping your students for the future? How are you prepping your child to be a productive, successful adult? Because it's left up to y'all. And y'all have a lot. Gen X has a lot of issues coming up. You have the transgender issues coming up. So how are we going to handle this as a society? What are we going to change? What are we going to allow? What are we not going to put up with? What are we going to add teeth to? Teachers don't make what they're supposed to be making. When I first started teaching in 1988, I made under $20,000. Under 20. And now I'm being retired. I'm making close to 54. And I have a, oof. And if it wasn't for Social Security, I wouldn't be able to make it. So what are you going to do? Parents, it's left up to you. But this child, first of all, was out of order for invading the space. Second, she had no business laying her hands on an adult. Should not have had the phone out. So, but understand, like I told you, once a student has laid hands on me, you have stopped being a student. You have become an adult. I stopped being a teacher and I have become a private citizen. Because, see, you have to understand, in education, if a student is jumped on, if a student is beat, that teacher can no longer stay in that system, much less that county, because once that altercation, the fight is occurring nowadays, before that fight is ended, everyone in other schools know about it. The count, everybody knows about the fight because it's on video. So see, that teacher cannot be an effective teacher because a student whipped their ass. Because there's always going to be another student to think they can do the same thing and do it better. Be a copycat. So see, that goes into factor too. So, parents, what you going to do? I appreciate y'all. I appreciate you allowing me to babble. I love y'all. Please keep in mind, please remember to keep the Crum family, Jonathan Crum, in your prayers. Jonathan, we got you in your prayers. We love you, man. Miss Crum, we love you. Twin, we love you. Y'all take care. I will see y'all tomorrow. Be safe out there. Know that you are the ones that create everything about you, that control everything about you. Know your value, know your worth. And most importantly, know that I love you more than I love my luggage. I'll see you Tuesday. Y'all take care. The live stream on the show. On the show. The live stream. On the show. The live stream. On the show. Fumes. Fumes, the live stream on the show.